Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to coming. Um my name is João Cazon. I will be the moderator for this session today. We're gonna start. Actually, we're gonna start on the second presentation. Dr. David Yoon. The presentation is a global perspective of epiclow, endophyte toxicity, and shown pasture. So we have 15 minutes to present, and in this time you have time for questions as well. Thank you, Dr. David. We have a question? We have any question? As we don't have the next presenter, we can stay and discuss if you want. We need to wait 15 minutes, okay?
Thanks, great talk. I was wondering if you could clarify a little bit about the heat stress and the toxicity, endophyte toxicity. Is that heat stress on the animal being exacerbated by the toxicity? Is it a compounding factor? Is it heat stress on the plant that's making it more toxic? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's driven by the class of alkaloids, the ergot-alkaloids, and particularly we've focused on ergot-valine, and that causes the vasoconstriction. So for things like fescue foot, the blood supply is reduced, and eventually there's no blood there. That's why the feet or ears or tail fall off. And also in the heat of summer, when animals get hot, they want to put more blood to the skin. Well, vasoconstriction is going on, and it cannot get blood to the extremities, to the skin, to cool off. Now, originally we thought it was just a tall fescue problem for the US, but we were naive, and it's also a problem for perennial ryegrass, because perennial ryegrass with the toxic endophyte also produces ergot-valine. And I think really it's just our ambient temperatures in New Zealand are cooler, we have lower humidity, but that's recognised significant impact for ryegrass toxicity in Australia where they are hotter in the summer. So yeah, it's quite well quantified and known.
Any other question?
I'll ask you a question about sort of global distribution. Of course, you know, what you showed, I guess, was reports from literature and that sort of thing, but I know that there's a lot of tall fescue in China as well. There's other regions of the world that have. Do you know about the endophyte status of those? I mean, I think there's actually Kentucky 31 all over the world now, but do you know about China? I think it's a very large acreage in a kind of a fescue belt.
Yeah, no, so I don't know of any reports here, either published or verbally, but you're so correct that Kentucky 31, when it was, you know, it was a wonder grass, and people wanted to adopt it, or people wanted to have it around the world, and that was a significant spreader of problem, particularly in South America, but also in Australia too. So there's a significant area, northern tablelands in New South Wales, where fescue is very, very strong, and it's the Kentucky 31 coming to that area, which gave toxicity to that area. But I'm not aware of the China aspect. And we have a few Chinese colleagues, so I should ask them. And of course, China has an epicloe endophyte in its own native grass, which causes the drunken horse grass, causes its own set of toxicities. These toxicities are not just confined to our cultivated ryegrass and tall fescue. Yeah, so thanks for that comment. So you haven't heard anything from China, or?
Any other question?
I think there'll be a very good discussion this afternoon in the semantic session.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. David. So we're gonna have a break, 15 minutes, because we don't have the next speaker, okay?
You've got 15 minutes to make yours work.
Perfect. That's my kind of stress, yeah. forgot.
So someone dropped me a look, tell people no, so they're going hand in hand. I got a bit of time, I've got 10 minutes to do that, so I'll come back.
Yep. So Amy, you have to be prepared, there's going to be lots of questions after yours.
Yeah, right. Only if you're asking them, I guess.
Have you chaired any other sessions, or just done this one? This one. Yeah. I think one of my colleagues, John Carroll, did one on Monday. He said, "Oh, some people tune up." I mean, I think a few people gone. Yeah, that's. It's just how old. Yeah. Maybe we could run.
Yeah. It's so touchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you need to look at? You looking at my title slide? Yeah. Yeah. You'll probably get it. It's a mouthful. Basically, we found. Well, I guess they don't need. We were looking instead of just a year-to-year story of rainfall and production plant growth. We found that these multi-year periods really matter. And so then I wanted to explore how that mattered in a bunch of different sites in the U.S. Along this temperature and humidity gradient. So did a cool analysis that, yeah. Yeah. So, but I'm hoping that's a global story because I do pull in the element of the Southern Oscillation, which is a big deal for a lot of countries.
Very much.
Yeah.
So was your gradient just east-west in the use, or
It's like
south as well?
yeah, it's like a north-south, slightly east-west. Oops. Because we have the 100th meridian is right this Texas line, which is dry on the west and wet on the east. So it's sort of like cold and dry.
Grassland.
Yeah. 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 And then these two sites, it's a little awkward because they're not in your typical grassland distribution map, but they're grasslands managed for agro crop rotation stuff. Hey, Emily. But
So you've got a wide range of grassland communities there.
right. So I'm taking like such a high level water and primary productivity that I haven't parsed out all the stories of the community composition and like what could be contributing biologically a bit more. So that's it. Yeah.
Red flower
Oh, yeah. That's in right where I'm living now. I'm blanking on the name.
there. That is a weed or what?
No, no, just wildflowers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The bright red. Yeah.
This situation is very common in the northeast of Brazil.
Gotcha.
During the winter,
Yeah.
everything is dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very strange for us.
Savannah.
We have wheat.
Right.
We should cold.
Gotcha. They for the Southwest, we actually have a bimodal precipitation, so we get winter and monsoonal systems coming through in the summer. So it's actually what I think is, yeah, driving some of this story. But, yeah, cool stuff. I don't know if anyone will flashback.
5 minutes.
It's good to know.
So
Who's
Okay, let's go to the next presentation. So we have Dr. Amy Hudson. The title is Length of the Multi-Year Precipitation Primary Production Relationships Vary regionally across grassland in Central U.S.
Thank you so much. That's great. Yep. Hi, I'm Amy Hudson. I am a research ecologist for the Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Research Service. And this is work that I did as part of my postdoc with the same organization with Dr. Deb Peters. And just want to start us off that we're on the same page, that we know that water is good for grasses. We expect these positive relationships between more rainfall and grasses in our central U.S. grasslands. Our group came up with a paper that actually found that when you aggregate multiple years of rainfall in a row, you get a stronger relationship with species richness and plant production at our site in the Chihuahuan Desert. And so that's sort of fueling this research that I'm going to talk about today, where we wanted to see if that multi-year story is similar at other sites. And I was able to do that because of this work that I led with a bunch of long-term ecological research sites in the US. These were for drylands. We were looking at the impact of climate change on drylands. And it was a wide range of drylands, but 6 of these sites were actually grasslands in the US. So as the lead author and the data wrangler and data organizer, I was an analysis person. I was able to work with these site leads to get from their sites these long-term production data sets and precipitation data sets. So that's what I'm using here. And we have over 20 years of co-occurring observations of plant growth and rainfall across this diverse grassland sites here. So starting in the southwest US, it's a bit more of a semi-arid, arid, warm desert grassland. And then we move north, and it's a little cooler, and it gets wetter once you go to tall grass prairie in Kanza, and then even more mesic mixed grasslands up in the northern region there. And so this research question here is that we wanted to identify temporal patterns of precipitation and plant production across this wide gradient of grasslands. And for plant production, I'm talking about above ground net primary production. The LTER network requires this measurement. It's pretty standardized across systems, so that was a nice data set to pull from. This is cool and warm season grasses and perennial and annual grasses, so a lot of generality here, and averaged over the whole water year. And they all had co-located precipitation weather stations that we were able to leverage. And then for the analysis, I pulled in this bivariate wavelet coherence analysis. It's gonna look like a lot of lava lamps coming up, but I'm excited to share that with you. Really, it's just a measure of the correlation between 2 time signals and then in the time frequency domain. And it's really useful if there's non-stationarity in those signals, so you can look at how that correlation can change over time. And I use the bi-wavelet R package to do this. I'm going to orient you to a few of the research or the result figures now. And this was at the Jornada Basin in the Chihuahuan Desert that we started off with, where we saw those multi-year patterns grouped together. So I have precipitation in this black line, and then gray line is productivity, and you can see there's pretty good agreement here. And when we pull in the wavelet analysis, same x-axis of time, 1990 to 2018, the y-axis is now at the top, it's year 0, going down to year 8. And then the color here is the coherence, but it's really like a correlation. So the redder, the better that they cohere more strongly. And then these black contour lines are really where you want to zoom your eye in. And just like you want to zoom in your eye to the black contour line regions, you want to ignore that grayed out area because that's where you get a lot of noise from the time series analysis here. So again, just focus in on these black contour lines. And now I'm going to hit you with all 6 of our sites in one figure, but don't worry, I'll point out the important stuff going on here. And I'm orienting you so that these at the bottom are more of the southern sites, and then we're moving up to the cooler and wetter sites at the top. And our first main result is that we saw, when you look at this, when you look at this top band, at the years 1 through 2, we see strong coherence at all sites. So that black box is showing at all sites. We have strong correlation, strong coherence between precipitation and plant production. Although there are a couple sites where you see that low coherence sneaking up, and when you look at the time series of the drought and of the precipitation and the production above it, we see that these low periods are ended with a severe drought, which we think is creating this low production and then a really nice strengthening of the coherence when paired with a strengthening of the coherence for a period after that severe drought. So it was sort of an interesting finding here. This one site in the Midwest had the lowest coherence across all sites, really indicating that there's something else going on here that's controlling production beyond our precipitation values. And then another key result from this story is that our southwestern and central Kanza sites had a lot of strong coherence at these longer time periods, so from like year 5 through 8. So we were thinking, what could cause this longer period of impact on precipitation? And when you think about 5 to 8 years, you think about the El Nino Southern Oscillation, the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, and these are really these large sea surface temperature anomalies that can reverberate these climate teleconnections over the globe. So this is really a phenomenon that should be seen at multiple sites across the globe. So we pulled in these time series. And not only are they important for this precipitation delivery, they have different periodicities to them. So you can see that the ENSO has peaks at year 3 to 7 here, and PDO has a similar peak, but a little bit more on the decadal side. So I took these climate indices and removed them from the precipitation story using a partial wavelet coherence analysis for all of these sites. And I found that when we removed those climate indices from the precipitation, it really lowered the relationship of precipitation and production across all sites. So that implies that these oscillations, or at least the frequencies that they're occurring, are very important to that relationship. And so basically here you can see that larger negative numbers in red are showing a larger impact at the site level. I was a little surprised to not see the Jornada, which is the Chihuahuan site, that had some lower numbers than I was expecting. So I'm really curious to dig into that more. I think it might be a seasonality story. Great. So walking away with some big general conclusions, our severe drought and lower production was followed by strong coherence. And this is potentially because it increases our plant sensitivity to rainfall. all sites showed strong coherence at short periods, so in that 1 to 2 year range. And then in the southwestern US and the tall grassland site, there was strong coherence at longer periods. We think a lot of that's due to these Pacific Ocean drivers that have similar oscillatory behaviors. And just make a big mental note here that these oscillations are expected to change with warming global temperatures. So we really need to keep talking to the climatologists as ecologists and make sure that we understand how that impact can influence our systems. And then sort of a hypothesis that I'm sort of putting out there to this group, hoping to get feedback on too, is whether this coherence at longer periods in the Southwest, could that also indicate a bit more of a resilience in our plant systems to interannual precipitation, so to this precipitation bouncing around? Are we building in this resilience to variability because they're used to these oscillations long term? Moving forward, I can go from a bivariate wavelet analysis to a multivariate and incorporate temperature. There was warming at each of these sites. I think that would be a really interesting story. And then what else contributes to periods of production? We sort of focus on periods of precipitation, what's contributed in periods of production, how does that vary by site? Community composition, life history of those plants, breaking down to subannual time steps, and looking at additional sites globally. And a personal moving forward, I'm now applying this story of climate ecosystem relationships to livestock quality and specifically vector-borne diseases, and thinking about grasslands as microhabitat for these vectors and food. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Amy. We have time for question. No? Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So gonna wait a little bit next, just to.
Get out for you.
So let's see if my finger also works. Yes, that's mine. Yeah, it accepts it.
And then I just hit the view.
Okay, and then it
and
appears.
popped over.
Okay, let's see.
And it was nice because you even have the note screen too. I didn't use it, but
Yeah, you know, I also use the version without notes, so I hope it works. If not, I have to improvise.
just get out of here.
Okay.
And then I just hit
Do you
that.
mind if I take a photograph of your name, Beji? Because that's what that's why I remember.
Cool.
And then
I'll remember your name. And I was getting some of you with just photographed my business card.
Okay.
That's what I was saying. I was going to ask you a question.
Hello.
yeah, that's a good. Depending on oscillation, but
Because it's a little bit too high, and if I move, then it's
Okay. Next presentation, red deer browsing decelerates regrow despite increasing wolf presence. Dr. Frederick, is correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. The audience, in the last talk we have heard about the importance of abiotic factors, but now I want to return to biotic interactions, which are very important for grassland ecology, especially if it comes to nature conservation. And therefore I would like to take you to Europe now and show that wild red deer can contribute to the conservation of valuable grassland habitats because they browse on shrubs and continue to do so even under increasing presence of natural predators. And why is this important? So this is a picture that I took now, it's 10 years ago in a remote region in Slovakia. And such traditionally used open landscapes have become rare in Central Europe. Traditional land use practices such as pastoral farming or low-frequency mowing are not profitable anymore. And in many cases, grasslands have been intensified by frequent cutting, high fertilizer input, also intensive grazing, or grasslands have been converted to arable or building land. On the other hand, also abandonment is a threat. So semi-natural grasslands and heathlands will convert to forest if they are not used. And this means that semi-natural grasslands and heathlands need to be maintained by conservation measures in Central Europe. So how does this relate to red deer? Sorry. During the last decades, extensive grazing by robust livestock breeds at low stocking rates has become an established management tool for conservation in Europe. And recent studies have shown that also wild herbivores can act as habitat engineers and foster biodiversity and contribute to open habitat conservation. And regarding some aspects, these wild large herbivores, such as red deer, can even be more advantageous because, for example, because they are wild and free-ranging, they might be excellent vectors for plant dispersal between distant habitat patches. So especially for areas which are not possible to graze by livestock, wild herbivores such as red deer might be a suitable management strategy for conservation. But some questions remain, and one of them is how red deer perform in terms of shrub browsing. Among livestock species, only goats are known to browse woody species intensely, but these animals are rarely available and also quite challenging to handle, so that in conservation target areas, shrubs often have to be removed mechanically, which is quite expensive. Another question is how the recent return of wolves in Central Europe will affect the impact of red deer on shrubs, on open habitat vegetation in general. And maybe you know the famous example from the Yellowstone ecosystem where wolves had been reintroduced, and subsequently certain tree stands were able to recover because the density and the behavior of the elk that were browsing on the trees had changed after wolf introduction. So probably some of you might not be familiar with wolf history in Europe, so here a short overview. Wolves have been eradicated over large parts of Central Europe due to intensive persecution for decades or even centuries, but due to strict protection, the species has recovered over large parts of Central Europe, and now focusing on the situation in Germany, we see that the species is quite abundant already in the northeastern part, but already also in the south, some territories are settled, and these two dots representing breeding packs are most important because this is a region where we studied the effect of red deer on open habitat vegetation. Specifically, I'm referring to the Grafenwöhr military training area in northeastern Bavaria. This is an area that is used for military training for more than 1 century, and it's a quite large area. It covers a larger area than the city of Cincinnati, actually. And it also belongs to the European network of protected areas. Another special feature of this area is its high population density of wild red deer, which use the open areas on the training area for foraging. So we took advantage of the fact for our study that in the year 2016, some areas on the training area were cleared from shrubs. So this is such a site before and after shrub clearance, and the white and gray squares indicate our open and fenced sampling plots. And on these plots, we collected data on the vegetation development once per year. Important for our study design is that we started with the study in one district called A here in 2016 with 17 paired plots, and replicated this in another district and in the same district by adding additional paired plots in 2020. And these two cohorts represent different stages of wolf recolonization in our study area. I'll show this more clearly here. So this is the training area in 2015. There were still no wolves, but then in 2016, the first individual arrived, and by the end of that year, another one joined. So from that time on, we had a wolf pair in the region. And then there was a significant, a gradual increase of wolves in the study area. So from 2020 on, when we established our second cohort of plots, we had always a pair on the training area and reproducing packs in the western and eastern forests, respectively. And we know from our camera monitoring that the wolves from both packs used also the training area regularly. And we are also collecting scats of the wolves, and from this we know that they actually prey on the red deer, although the smaller roe deer, which also occur, are used more often. And this are our two districts with the locations of the paired sampling plots. And this picture here, it's a quite nice representation of the conditions in District A. So we have unmown grassland and mown grassland, forest elements, and the shrubs were mostly thorny shrubs of the Categus and Prunus genera. District B was more diverse. We had some sites that were similar to the ones in District A, but approximately half of the 25 plots were heathland plant communities with birch succession, upcoming conifers, sometimes also broom occurred. And as I said, on all these plots, we collected data on vegetation development. We measured the height of the shrubs, usually in late November. We estimated the cover of the shrub and herb layer and also the share of dead herbaceous biomass, because also an increase in senescent plant material can be an indicator for beginning succession due to insufficient biomass removal. And yeah, here some results. No, that was too fast. Here we see the average height of the shrubs in our sampling plots. The gray bars are the fenced plots, the white bars are the open plots. So we focus on these white bars now, and we see that over the years there's barely any change in shrub height. While already 1 year after fence establishment, we see that there's a significant difference in shrub height between open and fenced plots. And this happened although we had this increase in the local wolf population from 0 to 2 breeding packs. So this suggests that independently from wolf presence, the red deer each year feed on the fresh shrub shoots and thereby prevent an increase of shrub height in the open plots. And we have also evidence that the red deer feed on the herbaceous biomass. Unfortunately, we did not assess the share of dead biomass in the first year, but then we see that there's constantly more dead biomass in the fence than in the open plots. This is now just an example from our paired plots directly after shrub removal in 2016, then 3 years later during the vegetation period, and this is 2020, our last measurement in November. Okay, so far I showed only results from our first cohort of plots. which were located all in one district and therefore represented quite similar conditions regarding, for example, vegetation, composition, and soil. Therefore, it's quite exciting to see if we were able to reproduce these results also with our second cohort of plots, all the more because this cohort started when there were already a high number of wolves in the region. So here we have now the results for the second cohort of plots in District A and B. And directly we can see, so our plots were installed in spring 2020, and we returned already half a year later this time in autumn of that year. And already by now we have a significant increase in shrub height in the fenced compared to the open plots. And similarly to what we saw for cohort 1, there's only a minor increase in shrub height in the open plots. And yeah, so despite the 2 established wolf packs, this supports that the red deer continue to feed on the shrubs. And to make the picture complete here, also the share of dead biomass for our second cohort. This time, fortunately, we also assessed the initial conditions, and there were no differences in the share of dead herbaceous biomass between open and fenced plots. But then, similarly to what we had in cohort 1, we always have more dead herbaceous biomass in the fenced compared to the open plots. So what can we conclude from this? First, we can state that the red deer are actually able to decelerate the shrub regrowth substantially, and this was true for different environmental conditions and different shrub species. And this is quite promising from a conservation perspective, because in areas where wild red deer occur, the frequency of mechanical shrub removal might be reduced, which saves cost for conservation. However, we might expect such a contribution of wild red deer to conservation only if the red deer are actually able to forage in open habitats, and this depends on a targeted wildlife management strategy. Second, we can state that we did not find evidence for a trophic cascade such as in the Yellowstone system, because despite the increase of the local wolf population, the red deer continued to suppress the shrub regrowth. And therefore, we propose that in areas where wolves return, relying on wild herbivores instead of livestock for conservation grazing might be helpful to mitigate the risk for livestock depredation and human carnivore conflict that comes along with recolonizing wolves in Central Europe. And with this, I've reached the end of my talk. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Frederick. Any question?
Thank you, Frederick. Excellent presentation. Did you measure shrub density or survival of shrubs? And if not, can you just give me your best guess of what you think happened?
Yeah, so what I can show, I have another slide on our estimate of shrub cover. So this is the above row here. And yeah, it's quite similar to what we saw for the shrub height. So the density of the shrubs also increased a lot. And what might be interesting here is that we see for the herb layer in the fence plots that here there's a decrease of cover, and we think that this is related to the higher cover of the shrubs. This leads to reduced light for the herbs, and therefore the cover of the herbs decreases after a certain amount of time. I don't know if this helps.
Kill any of the shrubs, or did it just reduce their cover?
It reduces cover and height, and I'm also not sure if, so it won't kill the shrubs. So shrubs are there, and they prevent that they increase in height. I don't know how long they can prevent the shrubs from increasing. If at any point in time one shrub grows so tall that they can't reach it anymore, there will be a higher increase. So, but what we can say for now is that they can decelerate the regrowth substantially. And I talked to the foresters in that area, and they said that as far as they know, this was the first mechanical shrub removal in the area. And yeah, the one forester, he's there for 30 years now. So it's a quite long time that the red deer are able to keep the shrubs down.
Okay, thank you, Frederick. So this was the last presentation, so we finished this session. Thank you all the presenters.